Good morning, everyone. Tim coming at you with this morning's pre-market prep, something we do every single day for the pro traders over at alphawolftrading.com. Coming at you with this morning's pre-market prep and a lot to go over. Markets are looking pretty good this morning. It's a gap up day. I'm actually not that fond of gap up days. They are more challenging days, at least they are for me. Um, but we are looking at a fairly strong open in the markets. I think the healthcare bill, or at least some chatter that they have the votes to get the healthcare bill through, could be a good thing. Seems like Wall Street likes it because why? Well, then we can focus on tax reform, right? And that's really what everybody wants. Um, so let's take a look at. I've got a lot of stocks to go through here. We've got some earnings that are still coming in. Uh, you know, hold on a second here. Last night we had Facebook, Tesla. Look, earnings came in strong. Square, they came in good. Um, and these two in particular are pulling back a little bit, but the earnings themselves are actually pretty darn good. This morning we had Chesapeake out, and that was a beat. That's getting a little action in pre-market. We've got some big names after the close: Activision, Sierra Wireless, Kara, which I'm pretty interested in. Marathon Oil, Nasdaq. There's several names that are going to be reporting after the close that I have interest in, but um, let's go ahead and take a look at the stocks that caught my eye this morning. One of the members brought up SCON, insider buys, something that we pay close attention to. And he had a director who picked up 200,000 shares at a buck 69, and it's getting a gap this morning. It's up now. Look, I've been following this company for a long, long time, and I think what they're trying to make is could be a game changer for the industry. That's this high temp wire. Um, but they have been burning through cash, and they have been diluting the crap out of shareholders for quite some time. To see insider buy step up and buy a significant amount of shares like this, maybe there's an indication that they're getting close to finishing all of maybe they can actually start getting some orders, right? They burned through a lot of cash. About I think they have 8 million on the books right now, and they burn through about 10 million a year. They may have to wind up doing another capital raise. Rodman Renshaw just did an upgrade with a $3 price target on these guys not too long ago. It is over the 200-day moving average. You do have the 50 days that's sloping up, and it's got a pretty nice looking setup on the daily. It's held up far better than I expected. Now, I don't know when they report earnings. I think you need to check that out before you get involved. Let me just make sure that I do not have earnings. Okay, hold on. I'll tell you when the earnings are. They are May 11th. They're next Thursday. So keep that in mind. It's gapping a little bit here this morning. It got up to about $2.11, I think, off of the insider buys. But it's got earnings coming up, and if it disappoints, if they don't have some really good news, this thing could get whacked. So just keep that in mind. I would look at this as a day trade. If you can lock some profit off of a day trade, then maybe you look to hold some lottos into a binary event like earnings. All right, let me keep going here. SQ Square earnings report last night. This thing is tapping, all-time highs. It had a much bigger short position than it does now. I think they may have given up, but 219 million shares in the float. This is not a really thin stock, so it's gapping this morning. It gapped last night. It got up to about 20 bucks, and it's pulling back right now. Look, I look at this as what was resistance could act as support. So close to $18, or if for some reason we were to get a pullback to the 50-day moving average around 1750, that'd be a great entry, I think, for a long-term hold position or a swing. Right? Look to get it on a pullback for a longer-term hold. Could get a day trade opportunity out of it. Maybe you get a bounce off of $18. I think close to 18 1750. I think that's where it gets pretty compelling, right? Uh, I mean, there is a gap to fill on the daily here as well. I mean, that could fill at some point. But if I get involved in this stock, I have no intention of selling it until I make money. So, you know, you look at maybe 17, the 50-day moving average, 1750, somewhere in that area as a potential entry point. If it happens to break below there, you get down to 1650. I think maybe you have good support in that area. I'd probably, if it got down to 1650, I would look to add to my position. So I may not take a full position at 1750 with the idea that maybe it could pull back further and maybe that this gap could even fill right down to 1525. I would add to my position, probably double or triple up at that point, and then hold it for the long haul until I make some dough. But SQ could be a day trade, could be a swing, could be a long-term hold. That's up to you. You need to look into it a little further, do your own due diligence. But this thing is flirting with all-time highs. I like it. All right, let me see what else we've got going on here. Whole bunch of stuff. Whole bunch of stuff. TIG. So this is a recent IPO. It's a biotech stock. Only 9.5 million shares, 9.6 million shares in the float. They're going to be reporting some long-term data next week, phase 3 data. So this thing traded, I think, literally no shares yesterday. All right, it is a very, very tiny, it's not very liquid. So keep that in mind. It has an interesting setup, right? It is sloping up. It's over the 50-day moving average, but the problem is liquidity. It doesn't trade a lot of shares. Now, this may not move until next week, right? But it's good to have this in your mind, right? You know that TIG is a biotech stock that has a very low float, that has some big data coming out for phase 3 next week. So this could be next week. It could either tank, or it could be a big gapper down or a big gapper up, depending on what that news is out of the phase 3 data. And this one is worth keeping on your radar. I mean, it's let me just make sure. Right, brand new or recent IPO, has not done a lot, but it has had some decent volume days in the past. Right, it's had some decent volume days. Actually, that's what, 34,000. That's only 34,000 shares. Super, super. This hasn't traded any volume at all. If it ever gets some volume, it could be fun to watch, or it could be good for a day trade opportunity. But I'm not looking to trade it today at all. JBL, this is more of a long-term hold, right? I've been watching this stock consolidate in this range for a while. Where's the ideal entry for me? 28 bucks. Long-term hold is what I've been looking. It had some news today, not significant news, just some news. $28. Pull back to the 50-day moving average, this area of price support, and I think that's an ideal entry for a potential swing, long-term hold. You back it out to the weekly time frame. This is a big, I mean, on the weekly it looks hot, right? I mean, it's just nice looking setup for JBL. If this thing can take out 30 bucks with some volume, I think, that would be a big deal, right? Just looking at the monthly time frame, $30 is a pretty big area. Try to get out of, try to break out of that 30 bucks, and it's building a nice base to do that from. So $28, I would look to get into this for a long-term hold, or swing type position. But I really like the setup off of for JBL. Fit just reported. I hate the stock. I hate this. I don't even like the product. It's garbage product. But reported earnings, they beat. They beat on cuts, right? So they didn't beat through growth. They beat on cuts. Doesn't mean that you can't trade the stock, right? So 171 million shares. It's not thin, but it's got 24% short interest. It's flirting with the 6 roll. Actually, it popped up to over 6 and change. What did it get up to? It got up to 640. Now it's pulling back, it's testing $6, which acted as resistance, could now act as support. So I'm looking at this as potentially a bounce trade off of the 50-day moving average, 590. Just a day trade, scalp opportunity if you get some real nice, if you get some real nice volume, could be a good day trade there. Look for an intraday setup. WTI, full disclosure, I own it. I started building a position. Um, it's in, look, oil industry, not hot right now. Oil's pulling back. Strong dollar could, if we continue to see a strong dollar, you could see more weakness in oil. But they just reported earnings. It was a beat. It's gapping a little bit this morning. It got up to about $2.27. It's pulled back to $2. You know, I have a starter position. This is in my long-term hold account. I do plan to hold it until I make a decent chunk of dough. It was just $3 not too long ago. There's insider buying in this area from like $1.50 up to $2. There's been some pretty decent size insider buying. Worth keeping an eye on WTI. It's only got 51 million shares in the float, 10% short interest, 11% short interest, but it's going to be tied to oil. Oil weakens, this will likely pull. If it gets down to $1.72, I'm going to double or triple up on my position. Like I said, they just reported earnings. They were decent earnings. Could be a day trade, could be a swing. I mean, we get some real volume. You could take a scalp out of it, but I'm looking for more than just a scalp in WTI. BZH just reported earnings. Now, the headline does not look great, although this headline looks good. Reports strong second quarter earnings. But if you look at the headline on Benzinga, it's like, okay, they lost 23 cents versus 4 cents, but they are addressing their debt, and their sales came in at 425 million versus 397 estimate. So they beat on the top line, they missed on the bottom line, but they are addressing debt. If this pulls back, this is another one that I want in my long-term hold account, or at least a longer-term swing. If this were to pull back to 1150 in this area, I don't know what it's doing pre-market. Let me take a look. BZH. I will enter this today. Starter position. If it gets below 1150, somewhere in that area. I did read the transcript on the earnings, and they've got a nice backlog. It's sitting right on top of the 200-day moving average. If it breaks below, we pierce below, get down to 1150. I think that's an area of price support that I'm willing to start dipping my toe in BZH. But like I said, this is more of a long-term hold. There's also been insider buying there as well. Let's keep moving because I want to get this out earlier than I got it out yesterday. HIIQ, which is came out with earnings, nice looking setup. It popped this morning up to about $19 and is pulling back. Okay, so I would be looking at this one maybe for a pullback to 18. 1818 is actually a pivot that could pull back to or so. Maybe we pull back to 1787, right? It just broke over this trend line. They just did an offering not too long ago at $14 is what it was priced at. But I think this also, if it breaks out, if it gets up to $21, this is a hot looking chart on the weekly too, right? Nice big run, pull back, consolidate. I think if it gets to over $21, it's going to be all-time highs on HIIQ. So earnings were good. I think it's worth keeping an eye on. I think it's worth keeping an eye on HIIQ. Small, tiny float, 7.1 million shares in the float, 15% short interest. So could get pretty interesting on that one. It could be a good day trader, could be a swing. You have to do your own due diligence and do what you're comfortable with, but worth keeping an eye on HIIQ for a potential day trade. or swing. TTMI, good earnings report. They came in at the high end of their guidance, pulling back to an area of potential support. It's not doing a whole lot pre-market. 91 million shares in the float, 15% short interest. Guidance was just in line, so this may not do a whole lot. I've just been watching this consolidate in this area for a while. It's been holding on to the 50-day moving average. Pierces below it, but then it recovers. I don't know. Maybe this pulls back to 15 bucks. In this 15-20 area to 100 EMA, and it bounces. Could be an area for a bounce. Trade between these two areas of resistances and support. Could be a swing. Worth having on the radar. I like the setup. CNAT. CNAT is gapping off of good news this morning, right? It did gap up to CNAT. We gapped up to 10 bucks. We pulled back to 9 bucks. Is where we're currently sitting. I think the news is good. It's only got 23 million shares in the float, 4% short interest. Could get a test up the 1050 area. All right, I'm looking at this one for potentially a day trade opportunity. Maybe hold some lottos if I can bang out a nice profit on a day trade. Just hold some lottos, see if it gets any follow through. But pretty nice looking setup. I mean, it's had a nice run. It pulled back after piercing the upper Bollinger Band, and now we're getting a little gap. So I wouldn't chase this. I would look maybe for a pullback to 850 or so and see if that holds as a support, or 860, see if that holds as support to bounce from. But CNAT, potential day trade opportunity there. CHK. Now, they reported earnings. It was an earnings beat. There's a bunch of insider buying in this range, from 5 and change to 6 and change. I mean, significant insider buying. I actually just played this one not too long ago from this 490 area. I sold it up here, and I'm looking at getting back in. Now, it popped. It was looking like it was going to test 6 this morning. Hold on a second. Got up to about $5.80, and right now it's pulled back to $5.50. Listen, if it pulls back to $5.22 or $4.90, I'm gonna. Natural gas season is behind it, right? But earnings were good, better than expected. A lot of insider buying. If this were to pull back, and this would be more of a swing, not a day trade for me. It can have decent moves in a day, but I'm looking to collect more out of it. If it gets down to this $5 area, I'm gonna buy it, and I'm gonna have it in either my swing or my long-term hold account, and I'm gonna hold it in that area, right? So looking for it to go back up and test this trend line somewhere around $6. So pull back to 5 or 490. I'm likely gonna take it for a swing or a long-term hold consideration. But decent earnings. I think it's worth keeping an eye on that one. 15% short interest. It's thick. The reason I am looking at a swing or a long-term hold is it's got almost 1 billion shares in the float. So you got to keep that in mind. All right. Let's see what else. I'm almost done. BPMX. Had some news last night, and I mean, it was looking hot. I've been looking for it for a $1 holla, and I knew they had the binary event coming up, so they reported data last night. So here's the issue: primary endpoint hit, secondary endpoint did not hit. That apparently is what the problem is here now. Just had a fund buy a pretty significant amount of shares at 78 cents. Warrants are priced to exercise 90 cents. This got down to 42 cents last night after the close, or close to there. And it's bounced back a little bit to 62 cents. Now you got somebody came out and defended it. Day trade, This is what I'm looking at here. Day trade opportunity. See what the volume is. This got 40 million shares in the float. I think they also have pre-approved a reverse split and a increase in stock issuance. So I mean, there's a lot going on with this company. Be careful. But for a day trade scalp opportunity, I think it could be interesting. Right now, it's sitting at 59 cents, which is right at the 50-day moving average. Right? Maybe if it pulls back to 48 cents or so, it could be an area to bounce. For a quick scalp. I'm keeping an eye on it for a potential day trade opportunity only. Let's see what else. I'm gonna try and get through the rest of this as fast. So two of my favorite names from last night's earnings reports are FIBN. This one is looking at flirting with all-time highs. It's in a beautiful uptrend, right? Beautiful uptrend. Good earnings report. Last night it was gapping. I think it got up to about $20. Hold on a second. Take a look. FIBN. This only got 51 million shares in the float. It got up to about $20.82 last night. So what I'm looking at here is a pullback to 18, right? 18 and change, 1850. What acted as resistance acts as support is kind of what I'm looking for. Maybe we pull back to 1890. I don't know. Look somewhere in this area. Nice little cup, flirting with all-time highs. It is a little bit overbought, right? But good earnings report. I think good guidance. This is worth keeping an eye on for a potential day trade opportunity, or maybe a swing if it were to pull back into the $17 range, right? Test the 50-day moving average. Good earnings. I haven't looked to see what insider activity is here, but I would probably check that out as well before taking it as a long-term hold or a swing. But definitely worth keeping an eye on that one. And then FORM reported last night, and that one was pretty good looking earnings report. And let me take a look at FORM. At a pop up to $12.50, pulling back. Currently, it's at about $12.20. Not a lot of volume, but looking at this one, saying, okay, $11.80, $12. Maybe that's the place to take it for a potential bounce. All right, 60 million shares in the float. I could be looking at this one for a day trade if it has enough liquidity and volume. It's over the 200-day moving average. It's over the short-term moving averages. This 12 seems to be a pretty big area. 13 would be potential target, which has acted as resistance in the past. I don't know if that's all-time highs. I don't think this is, no. 13 is a big spot for it, though. Or 12 is actually a big spot. If it takes out $13, potentially, right, the next significant area of resistance be somewhere around 1550. So this could be a swing, could be a long-term hold. Just have to do a little bit more due diligence there on FORM. It's in the right sector too, semiconductors. I mean, that space held up fairly well yesterday. All right, I think that is pretty much it for me for this morning. We've got plenty to watch. Look, don't chase. Like I said, gap up days can be challenging days. Keep an eye on the dollar, right? Keep an eye on the dollar. Let's just take a look real quick and see what's going on in pre-market here. I haven't looked at it since early this morning, but okay, gold pulling back, silver pulling back, copper pulling back, oil pulling back, right? We see some weakness across the board on commodities. S&P got a little gap there, NASDAQ gap. Facebook earnings, look, we had some big name earnings. They were decent earnings yesterday, but the stocks have had a pretty good run. Dollar is not really gapping. So I'm not sure what's killing commodities really this morning, but dust, J dust could be in play today. I wouldn't chase the open on it. Look for a pullback and then maybe a bounce, but make sure you have a plan for each and every trade. Know your risk reward. Do not chase. Do not chase. Know why you're taking the trade. Know what time frame you're willing to wait. Have a plan. All right. Good luck trading today. And I'll see you tomorrow with the pre-market prep.